إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله بشيرا ونذيرا وصل عليه وعلى أهله وأصحابه أجمعين. يقول الله في كتابه الكريم بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم: يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. ويقول أيضا: يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. عباد الله, أما بعد. Indeed, all praise and thanks belong to Allah, Lord of the worlds. We seek His assistance and His forgiveness. We also seek protection in Allah from the evil within ourselves and from the evil consequences of our actions. Whomsoever Allah guides, no one can misguide them. And whomsoever Allah allows to be misguided, they cannot find guidance. I bear witness that there is no one worthy of worship except Allah alone, and that the Prophet Muhammad is His last and final messenger. May the peace and blessings be upon him, his family, and his companions altogether. Allah reminds us in the Quran when He says, O you who believe, fear Allah the way He deserves to be feared, and do not leave this world except that you're in a state of submission to Allah, a state of Islam. And He also reminds us when He says, O you who believe, fear Allah and speak the truth. Stand up for justice, do what's right. Perhaps if you do so, Allah will direct you to do good deeds, and He will forgive you your sins. And whomsoever obeys Allah and His Messenger, then indeed they have gained the greatest of all achievements. My dear brothers and sisters, I would like to direct your attention here to the hadith found in Imam Nawawi's book, the 40 hadith. It's hadith number 29, and it is recorded in At-Tirmidhi as well. This hadith, first and foremost, shows us the power of the Prophet ﷺ's comprehensiveness. He used to have the ability given to him by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to say a little, and the meaning is for those who understand. The meaning is deep, such value in the statements, that when the lady described the Prophet ﷺ, one of the ladies used to say, there's a hadith in which she describes the Prophet ﷺ, and one of the descriptions is that she says, when he spoke it was like an echo, meaning you could hear clearly, loud, vibrant. And when he mentioned something, it was coherent, logical, everything flowing like a pearl. You know the beads of a pearl when they come out one after the other. Every sentence like a thesis. Every word of advice has deep meaning and understanding of who he's giving it to. And likewise, the Sahaba themselves. If you look at the characteristics of the Sahaba, they used to be inquisitive. They would ask the right questions at the right time. They were afraid not to ask unnecessary questions. So sometimes they would be shy, but when they asked, it was something that they wanted to apply right away. So in this hadith, hadith 29, we see this beautiful interaction between Mu'adh ibn Jabal, the Sahabi in which the Prophet prophesied on the Day of Judgment, he will be the leader of the scholars, asking a simple question. And we see the answer given to him by the one who had the ability to have comprehensive speech. The hadith starts by Mu'adh ibn Jabal. He says to the Prophet ﷺ, قُلْتُ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ أَخْبِرْنِي عَلَى عَمَلٍ يُدْخِلُنِي إِلَى الْجَنَّةِ وَيُبْعِدُنِي عَنِ النَّارِ. O Messenger of Allah, tell me of an action, tell me of some deeds I can do who will enter me into Jannah and prevent me or distance me from the hellfire. So the Prophet ﷺ, he says, سَأَلْتَ عَنْ عَظِيمٍ. You have asked about a great thing, O Mu'adh. Simple question, but yet it is a great thing because it's the basics that we lack so many times in our lives. The first thing you must know, Mu'adh, the Prophet ﷺ starts to speak. He says, إِنَّهُ لَيَسِيرٌ عَلَى مَنْ يَسَّرَهُ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى عَلَيْهِ. That it is easy for those that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it easy for. So the first thing you must know is if you take a little step towards Allah, Allah will take many steps towards you. That you need the tawfiq of Allah before anything else. Because if Allah wants good for a slave, He gives them the understanding of the religion. And He makes the path to Jannah easy for him. Is it just out of favoritism? No, it's because the slave has something of desire that he wants to come near his Lord. So first you must understand and know that it is the tawfiq of Allah that you need for you to enter Jannah and for you to be distanced from the fire. Then the Prophet ﷺ, he gives them basics. He says, Ta'budullah, la tushrik bihi shay'a. You worship Allah, you don't associate any partners with Him. وَتُقِيمُ الصَّلَاةَ وَتُؤْتِ الزَّكَاةَ وَتَصُومُ رَمَضَانَ وَتُحِجُّ الْبَيْتِ. He says that you establish the prayer, you fast in Ramadan, and you make pilgrimage to the house of Allah. So just understand that this is basics, but it has deep meaning. The tawheed of Allah, the first and foremost. Many people think, I'm worshipping Allah alone, alhamdulillah. But if you look deep into the topic, you will see many of us are lacking. Perhaps some of them are our own brothers and sisters. Perhaps some of them are our own family members who back home go to masajid full of graves, not one, not two, but some even have 3. Some worship saints or ask saints to help them, prevent a calamity from reaching them, or ask them from some sort of benefit that they need. And then we have people who liken the Prophet ﷺ with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, asking him, the Prophet ﷺ, for things that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is able to do. And then it could be so subtle, even in your workplaces. Someone says jinx and everyone wants to knock on wood. But if you trace back this practice, it is going back to the European way of life, in which they had a tree called the God tree. And out of fortune, to get some fortune from this tree, they would go and touch on this tree. From that evolved what we have today, the knocking on wood phenomenon. And many scholars, when they wrote books of Tawheed, they mentioned these little things, the number 13 being bad luck, and all of these things that people subtly don't understand could be a deviation from the true Tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we must evaluate, is our Tawheed sound? Because that's the first thing the Prophet ﷺ, he says, Ta'budullah, you worship Allah, and you don't associate any partners with Him. Ask yourselves if you know someone who travels with a symbol in his car, and you ask him what is that symbol, he tells you it's to protect him from certain things. You go back into the country that we live in, you see people put these kinds of symbols outside their homes, some in their carpets. Some cultures are just fully embedded in this kind of phenomenon. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for protection, to always be conscious that at any time you could fall into this trap. Shaitan is working hard to deviate you from the path. And even if he doesn't get you to do the major shirk, don't forget about the minor shirk, in which the Prophet ﷺ, he says, I fear for you mostly the minor shirk, which is what? Riyah, doing things for other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That when you perfect your prayer, that when the brother perfects his prayer, it is because someone else is praying with him. It is that when he does something, it is out of trying to be seen by the people. This is the minor shirk. So we evaluate all this, we check ourselves. If we are sound in this, we go to the next piece of advice. Iqam as-salah. That to establish the prayer. This is not just someone who prays. This is someone who establishes the prayer. When something is established, it doesn't go anywhere. It's there always. Not only does he do it with himself, but he does it with his family. Then he goes on to say the fasting and the hajj and the zakat. The basic things that Allah legislated in His religion. Now, the Prophet ﷺ, he answers the question, but he gives Mu'adh more. He says, أَلَا أَدُلُّكَ عَلَىٰ أَبْوَابِ الْخَيْرِ. So we know, first and foremost, we pause at this here, because every interaction, every action of the Prophet is worth just pausing and learning. So the Prophet ﷺ, he knows who he's talking to. In all of the other hadith, when you hear about the pillars of Islam, it stops there. But in this hadith, he tells Mu'adh more. Why? Scholars have said it's because Mu'adh is someone who is keen in learning. He knows Mu'adh's ability to grasp the information. And some scholars today, they have this method. When they're teaching their students, Some students, they put right next to them. And then when asked why is that so, you will see the scholar explain, because what I'm going to say, some things are difficult to comprehend. And I need people who will understand so they can preach it after I'm gone. Many of you may not understand what I'm going to say. This is how the scholar would explain why certain people would be next to him and so forth. And that is a lesson that you know your audience and you speak to them at their level. If someone is hungry for knowledge, you give them more. If someone is in need of something, use that to give them da'wah. It is only benefiting them at the end of the day. And we see, like the Prophet ﷺ, Yusuf alayhi salam did the same thing. When the two companions of the jail came to him asking him to interpret the dream for them, he says, I will tell you before your food gets here. But first, let me ask you a question. Are being slaves to many gods better, or the one irresistible al-wahid al-qahhar? He asks them that question. The point is that he used his upper hand to deliver da'wah to them. And the Prophet ﷺ, he understands who he's talking to. He knows the benefits that can come if Mu'adh listens. And he will be one day, again, prophesied by the Prophet, the leader of the scholars on the Day of Judgment. And so he says, أَلَا أَدُلُّكَ عَلَىٰ أَبْوَابِ الْخَيْرِ. Shall I not tell you, O Mu'adh, about the gates of goodness? So he's moving up now. You've mastered the basics. Let's go more into the ways that you can get into Jannah and be far away from the fire. He says the first thing, as-sawmu junnah. He says that fasting is a shield. The scholars have said that it's a shield from two things. One is the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It blocks you. By fasting, you are distancing yourselves from the hellfire. And the second thing is it blocks you from the desires, the human desires, like anger, like jealousy, greed. All of these things that consume you, fasting suppresses them. And we know from the hadith that if you are fasting and you get into an argument, what shall you say? Inni sa'im, inni sa'im. Indeed I am fasting, indeed I am fasting. Another proof that it suppresses the anger. Then he says, as-sadaqatu tutfi'u al-khataya kama yutfi'u ma'u an-nar. That the charity extinguishes the fire the same way as water extinguishes the fire. Charity extinguishes the sins the same way as water extinguishes the fire. From another hadith of Mu'adh ibn Jabal, we understand what is referred to here as sadaqah. It is not only monetary, financial sadaqah, but it is any good action that you do right away after you do a bad one. And we know from the other hadith of Mu'adh ibn Jabal in which he says, ittaqillah haythuma kunt, fear Allah wherever you are, and follow up a bad deed with a good one. What will it do? Tamhuha, it will erase it. وَخَالِقِ النَّاسِ بِخُلُقٍ حَسَنٍ. And treat the people with good gestures. Be good to the people. The point of this, the middle part here, this proves that sadaqah is not only money. It is anything good you can do immediately after you've done a bad thing. Why is this important? Why is this the second gate of goodness, my dear brothers and sisters? Let us reflect. It is because you don't understand that you sin more than you do good deeds. And at the end of the day, the scales will be brought on the Day of Judgment. If you are negative in your balance, you will be in doom, in destruction. And so you think you're doing a lot of good. People think they're doing a lot of good, but they don't understand how much bad they're doing. There's an author who wrote a book called The Compound Effect. And in this book, he highlights how the little things make a great impact on people's lives that they don't even realize it. And he asked as an activity in this book, he says, take a journal and write down, for example, if money is your problem, write down how much you spend every day on little things. You don't even know. And you will see at the end of this journal, when you tally the total, you will see you have spent a large amount of money, if that's the problem you're focusing on. And you do this with all aspects of your life. Just write down and monitor your habits. You will see that you are on the negative balance when it comes to good deeds and bad deeds. And you will see that the Prophet ﷺ, he likened the bad deeds to the fire. So the bad deeds eat up away your good deeds. So even if you did a lot of good deeds, they will be null and void if the bad deeds are always there to eat them up. And so he says, to help you, he gives you a mechanism that you can use to reverse this. What is the mechanism? Is that you always follow up the bad deed with sadaqah, with some sort of good. Feed someone, go visit a sick, do something of good to reverse. And just to take it a point further, I want you to understand that the water extinguishes the fire. But if the fire is large, you need a huge amounts of water. You need huge amounts of water. And so keep that in mind when you are trying to reverse a sin. That don't do something small when you did something big. Try to equalize so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may have mercy on you. The third thing, the Prophet ﷺ, and the third gate, the final gate of goodness in this hadith, is the prayer of a man. Salatul rajul fi jawfil layl. The prayer of a man in the depths of the night. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he recited the verses from Surah Al-Sajdah. تتجافى جنوبهم عن المضاجع يدعون ربهم خوفا وطمعا ومما رزقناهم ينفقون فلا تعلم نفس ما أخفي لهم من قرة أعين جزاء بما كانوا يعملون. The Prophet recited the verses that mention that their sides are turning, trying to get up in the middle of the night to pray. What are they doing? They're asking their Lord, praying to Him out of fear and out of hope. And from whatever they were provided with, they give. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the next verse, the soul will not know what He has made hidden for it from the joyness of the eyes. This is a reward for what they used to do. And the scholar says, how beautiful is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His reward. Is that the prayer of the night, something that nobody sees. It's a secret between you and Allah. It's in the depth of the night. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the same way, He will give you a reward that no one knows. It's hidden. So it's exclusive, a special reward, just to reward you for the hard work. So this is the third gate of goodness. Then the Prophet ﷺ, he says, ألا أخبرك برأس الأمر وعموده وذروته سلامه قلت بلى يا رسول الله قال رأس الأمر الإسلام وعموده الصلاة وذروة سلامه الجهاد. He says the final advice the Prophet ﷺ gives in this sequence before the conclusion is that he says, shall I not tell you, O Mu'adh? He gives Mu'adh more about the head of the matter, the pillars of the matter, and the peak of the matter. And so Mu'adh says, Bala ya Rasulullah, yes, please ya Rasulullah, give me more. So he says the head of the matter is Islam. And he says the pillars of that Islam is the Salah. And that the peak of all of this is Jihad. So the scholars have said that the Prophet ﷺ, in describing Islam as the head, is letting you know that that's your foundation. A body with no head is no good, no use. So if you think you can do a lot of good but you haven't submitted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you're like a body with no head. And then how do you know if you submitted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? By checking the pillars. If the pillars are gone, everything goes, right? So how do you know if you submitted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Check your prayers. How's your prayers? Have you established them in your lives and your families? That is the sign that you have submitted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And many scholars have debated about the person who leaves Salah, whether he will be abandoning Islam altogether or not. So don't be a matter of debate. Strengthen your Salah because that is what's holding your Islam up. Then he says the jihad is the peak of all of this. The jihad is not only fighting in the sake of Allah, my dear brothers and sisters, but as the Prophet ﷺ elaborated to us, it is many forms of struggle and sacrifice. As he said to Aisha with regards to her Hajj or her Umrah, he said, that is your jihad. As he said to the man who came and he said, I left my mother and father crying so I can fight in your sake. He says, go back and make them laugh, take care of them, that is your jihad. So the Prophet ﷺ, he referenced jihad to many things. If we were to summarize those things, you could just say sacrificing everything for the sake of Allah. That is at the peak. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه غفور رحيم. اللهم صل على محمد في الأولين وصل على محمد في الآخرين. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, this is his final and concluding piece of advice. He says, أَلَا أُخْبِرُكَ بِمُلْكِ ذَلِكَ كُلِّهِ. Shall I not tell you, Mu'adh, about the owner of all this? He told him a lot of good things to do, how to enter Jannah, how to distance from fire. But now he's telling him the owner of all of this, what will keep this on check. So that Mu'adh, of course, he says, yes, Ya Rasulullah, please tell me. فَأَخَذَ بِلِسَانِهِ وَقَالَ كُفَّ عَلَيْكَ هَذَا. He held on to his tongue and he says, enough for you is this, Mu'adh. قُلْتُ يَا نَبِيَ اللَّهِ وَإِنَّا لَمُؤَاخِذُونَ بِمَا نَتَكَلَّمُ بِهِ قَالَ ثَكُلَتْكَ أُمُّكَ وَهَلْ يَكُبُّ النَّاسُ فِي النَّارِ عَلَى وُجُوهِهِمْ أو قال على مناخرهم إلا حصائد ألسنتهم. He says, Mu'adh says to him, "O Rasulullah, O the Prophet of Allah, are we going to be held accountable for what we say?" And so the Prophet ﷺ gave him the expression at the time, "How could you say this?" It's as if he was saying that. "How could you say this, Mu'adh? You know better than this. Is there anything more that drag people by their faces or their noses into the hellfire except the harvest of their tongues?" Some sports, I don't know about all sports, but some sports, the way you win games is you play defense. Defense wins games. Here, the same example the Prophet ﷺ is using to explain to you that no matter how much good you can do, there will be people on the Day of Judgment who will come, hasanat katibal, their good deeds like the mountains, but it will be at the end like dust, haba'an manthura. There will be some people who think they have a lot in their bank account of good deeds, but they will really be bankrupt. And when the Prophet ﷺ described the muflis, he said it is someone who backbited this, slandered this, but before that he said they came with a lot of good deeds. They came with siyam, they came with salah, they came with zakah. They took care of their mother. Think of every good deed you can do. People are coming with these things, but because they couldn't play defense, they couldn't hold their tongue, they lost it all. Think about who's on that line, my dear brothers and sisters, waiting to get some good deeds from you and waiting for you to take their bad deeds, for them to take your bad deeds. Is it your boss at work? Is it your neighbor? Is it your friend, your wife, your husband? Who have you talked about on a daily basis? My dear brothers and sisters, we need to understand that taqwa is the most important component of our lives. If we can withhold our tongue, we will be successful. And that is the words of the Prophet ﷺ. If you can guarantee me what is between your mouth and what is between your legs, I can guarantee for you Jannah. We see this all the time. People talking about somebody else, people slandering people just going on and on. We need to stop right away and advise those who you know, whom are engaged in these activities, that all of their good deeds, all of the things that they have hope for, to get a reward for, will be null and void in the Day of Judgment. Just to give you the magnitude of the matter, and we'll close with this. On the Day of Judgment, the Prophet ﷺ in an authentic hadith, he says that every breath that the son of Adam takes, not remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he will regret it. Think about that. How is that possible? Every breath that you don't remember Allah, Allah will hold you accountable to it. You will regret it. And so, what do we turn to for salvation? How do we save ourselves from this? Keep your tongue moistened with the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In two hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he says, whomever glorifies Allah more than 100 times a day, he will have 1,000 bad deeds removed from him and 1,000 good deeds given to him. This is how you can tip the balance in your favor. Whomever says, لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد وهو على كل شيء قدير, 100 times a day, it's as if he freed 10 slaves. And he gets 100 good deeds, and he gets removed 100 bad deeds, and he will have sovereignty, power over his shaitan that day until the evening. This is the solution that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provided us. We have to be of those people who hear what we hear, the good of it, and follow it. Allahumma arina al-haqqa haqqan warzuqna ittiba'a wa arina al-batila batila warzuqna ijtinaba. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب ربنا اغفر لنا ولإخواننا الذين سبقونا بالإيمان. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا. ربنا صل على نبينا حبيبنا محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. سبحانك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين. جزاكم الله خير وقوموا إلى صلاتكم.